Thank you very much for that moment of silence for the passing of Adam West, who we just heard about as we began to record this podcast.
To Adam West, you guys.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Alien Familiar Podcast. I am Clayton.
I'm Kyle, KP.
I'm Beth.
KD.
I'm Hayley.
Still Jordan.
And before we get started, I just want to remind everyone, our appreciated listeners, that you can find show notes and more at alienfamiliar.com. You can email us at alienfamiliarmedia@gmail.com, and we are on Facebook at facebook.com/alienfamiliar. And today, we are going to be talking about what makes a good player. And specifically, we are going to be talking about the qualities of good players that each of us share here sitting around the table. So, to start off this very uncomfortable subject for some of us, because some of us have great difficulty talking well of others, especially to their face. I feel like
we're not going to name any names or anything.
Gordon!
Sorry.
We can hide our faces. That would help.
Yeah, we can. All right, everyone, get
Put
your
a bag in my
your
head.
bags out.
But, KP, I'll start with you, and I want to say that one of your greatest qualities as a player that you have that I most appreciate is that when you are role-playing, you are always a facilitator for other people to join in with the role-playing with you. You're very inclusive with the other people who are around the table whenever we get together and like we're doing a story. I don't think your character has ever gone off alone by himself somewhere. You're always bringing somebody else along. You're always bringing the story to the main group. And that's something that, goddamn, I really appreciate, because I've had a lot of players in the past who, if I bring up something, even if they're not playing the sneaky rogue, they'll try to sneaky rogue it. And that's one of the things that I am most appreciative of you as a role player, or as a player in general in our games.
Thanks. Tried to make a lone wolf with Jimmy Hawk. Failed miserably. It's fine.
Speaking about things like Jimmy Hawk, despite whatever character you're playing, you're always able to step into the role of leader if it ever comes up. And I think that you're very good at helping and aiding people when they're feeling lost, whether in RPGs or like the role-playing aspect as well as mechanics. And I really appreciate how you have this gravitas to yourself and to every character that you play, in the sense of, like, you know how to step up and take action, specifically in our Abena campaign, how you've stepped up to be this leader and this general, and you've done an amazing job with helping the story be pushed forward. And that's something I've noticed you do in every single game.
That's why I drink beer, to acquire more gravitas.
So, should we talk about why some of those things are good sort of player roles, I guess? Like, why that would help someone sort of, come into their own when they're playing a character.
I think that's a good thing to have as players that are not only concerned with themselves having fun, but are concerned with everybody else around the table having fun, including the GM. Like, just being, I hate the phrase, but to be a team player, essentially.
Being a facilitator, I think, is really important because, we've mentioned in a past podcast that some players don't want to group up. And it's hard enough for the GM to run the enemies, the scenario, NPCs, and everything else, and coordinate the party, which is something that, the players should be able to do themselves. So when you have a player who's willing to kind of take a couple for the team, facilitate everyone else, sort of be a coordinator, I think that's a really good tool to have, because then it eases some of the burden on the person running the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a good way to, like, bring a party together. Or if you have someone who's always trying to, like, make connections with other characters, it really could give your party and your campaign a certain friendly atmosphere. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, you all should be friends. It really helps forwarding your story if you have somebody who is willing to create teams, get people together. And it's a lot harder than you think it is to always be the one who's like, okay, we're going to do this as a team. We're going to push these things through, and it's really cool that you always do that.
And not only just within the game itself, I'm talking outside of the game as well. You're like, whenever we were playing in public, you kind of had an eye on the surroundings. If anybody else was interested in what we were doing, you were the one who noticed it. You made the effort to bring them in.
Okay. You can't have like a goober look on your face for the rest of the podcast.
Continue. Keep it rolling.
You're the reason we have Corey, or well, Corey's
the reason we have Corey.
Yeah, that was everyone just got played there.
But I feel like a lot of this room is grouped. I mean, we always meet at you and Kyle's house. It's really great that you're always there emotionally and physically for the other players and your other friends. And I think that's important to have in campaign settings, specifically when things will get out of hand in campaign. You're always a good person to be there and to help push things forward and get through rocky patches in a campaign. And that will happen in campaigns where sometimes things will either slow down, burn out, or things will get too intense. And being who you are as a person and as a role player, you're always magically able to help a situation out in the best direction.
I think that I could say about both KP and Jordan, you guys both know, like, fucking everything. You at least appear to know everything. I'm sure some with Jordan comes from researching, like, the game, Apocalyptia, and, some of KP's comes from, your job and knowing a lot of the scientific and computer type things. But I think some of it speaks to you guys, like, really absorbing outside information well, and then making characters that cater to both you guys' knowledge bases so that you can really contribute. Like, you guys both come up with extremely good ways to go around problems aside from just bash that door down or, just like a hack and slash sort of thing. Like, both of you are really good at coming up with those, like, kind of sideways lateral thinking type things.
I think thinking outside the box is a good thing to do when you're in an RPG, because it does get a little stale if your go-to format for solving every crisis or issue or problem is just, well, I'm going to hit it till it stops moving, and then the problem's solved, as compared to where Jordan will be like, all right, I have this 6-step plan to get us in there, and we don't even have to go near the guy. Like, and it's just, a good thing to do to sort of keep things fresh.
That is one of the things that I appreciate about role-playing with you, KP, is, it's fun to connive with you. You're good at it.
When I left, I was but a learner. Now I have become the master. I haven't left. I think that's one of the core tenets of game design philosophy that I studied in college that I really took to heart, is this notion. Plus, it really helps when you're sitting in a bar and someone attractive asks you, so what do you do? And you have to explain to them that you make games, to explain that it takes a little bit of many different areas of study. I mean, history, sociology, physics, whatever. And knowing just a little tiny bit about a lot of different things as a player and as a game master, I think, can really help you to make your role-playing feel more realistic and come up with new strategies, and also to identify what another player is trying to do or what they want to do in character but might not have the real-life know-how to get it done, to kind of help facilitate that plan by just, read random Wikipedia pages. I don't know. Thanks, everybody.
All right, so now we complimented KP enough for the entire year.
My ego swelled 4 times that day.
I actually hate playing with all of you. So I have nothing positive to say in the slightest.
The feeling is mutual, motherfucker.
I think a lot of the same qualities that KP has, I think Jordan carries them as well in the aspect of conniving, as you so well put it.
Hang on. Beth is next in line.
No, I thought we were popcorning it. Were we popcorning it? I'm sorry, okay.
I thought we were just like...
Wait,
I thought you said it was a free-for-all.
Popcorning it?
It was.
Yeah.
I said there was going to be a free-for-all.
God damn it, I thought
I listened to directions.
You're not getting out of this so
you can't
easily,
get
Jordan.
out of it. So
He just
Jordan.
looked at the window and seriously considered jumping out of bed.
Yeah, Jordan, you're not going to get omitted due to time constraints.
Yeah, transition. Batman tribute. You are really, really good. You're always the man with a plan. Whether it is with a Tomb of Horror scenario or a general fight or just an RP session, you always are able to look at something and attack it from the side, from a different angle that other people can't see, and you bring a level of intellectual diversity to every game that we play with you. I really appreciate having a player that can always not diverge from plot or structure, but finds a different path so the story can be told in a new and interesting way. And you always manage to do that perfectly.
I wouldn't say perfectly.
I've never seen someone so successfully walk the line between having your own motivations and goals, which, on the one hand, is very good for a player to have, because without goals, I feel like the DM would just be sitting there trying to throw story and plot points at the players, and they're just bouncing off their faces, and no one's latching on, and no one's taking them. And it's very frustrating as a DM to have players that just, oh, I'm up for anything. What do you want for dinner? Oh, anything. But I've never seen somebody better walk the line between having usually hilarious or interesting or tangential, maybe even goals, but not taking it too far into the total chaos territory or the total lone wolf zone,
Right.
Where your goals are the most important thing. Screw the other players. I'm going to do this no matter what. And it usually ends up being the Hunter game comes to mind, where you have your own goals and ideas, and everyone else just kind of not necessarily falls in line, but finds a way through your facilitation of this to come along for the ride while also accomplishing their own things and the main plot of the game somehow. It's hard to do.
It sucks to run games for players like me a lot of times. Lots of DMs have gotten either outwardly pissed off or, quietly frustrated because, here's the thing to do, here's the steps to do it, and I've run lots of games. I know you can't think of every single angle of approach. Nobody's got time for that shit. And so when there is some weird loose end that you can tug at and unravel a big hunk of content for the game, it's frustrating as hell. And, that's just the way that I think, and I think like a computer programmer, and I'm looking at problems and trying to figure out the most efficient way to solve them. It's not really how games are supposed to work, but I don't know how to do it otherwise. So, I don't know, maybe it's cool sometimes, but I think any DM that I've played with more than 2 or 3 times has probably gotten annoyed at me once or twice at least for that.
No,
so, yeah,
I've never.
Yeah, lots of times.
Jordan, you're a really good teacher for the hobby. Whenever I'm a game master and I've got players who are new to a system, I can always depend on you to have rules knowledge about the system that we're playing, and then to spread that knowledge to other players who are either new to the game, new to the entire hobby, or new to the particular system. Because not everybody has the time and the inkling to get familiar with an entire rules set. When I've been a game master, you've taken a lot of the burden off of me for instructing new players on how to get through the game, how the game is actually played. I think about the Apocalyptia session where Kyle had 3 friends in from out of town, and you spent a lot of time guiding them, instructing them not just on how to play this game system that you wrote, but also how play through a role-playing game goes.
2 of those 3 were completely new to role-playing. One of them had done it once years ago, I believe. Mm-hmm. And it went fairly well.
Which game are you referencing?
The Apocalyptia session where we had the 3 additional
it was
players.
Cozy and her mom.
Oh,
and
right.
her friend
Yeah.
Taylor.
Yeah, that's important to me.
my co-stars in the Zelda film, which is due to come out. And what?
Go ahead. Finish it.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, where there's a Zelda fan film that we've been working on for several years now, a couple of years pre-production. We filmed for like a month just about, and it is officially coming out in 1 year. Next May. I guess it's June now, but about a year. There's been some slowdowns with post-production, but we had an official release date finally set. So,
Awesome.
I played Link.
Of course you did.
Speaking of the Apocalyptia game, which is up on our page, and you can find it on our iTunes. And what else was it?
It's on Stitcher.
Stitcher. And I promise this is a compliment. You're not afraid to play asshole characters. You're not afraid.
Wow, I don't know where it comes from, Jordan. But anyway.
I gotta dig deep, really.
Yeah, you're not afraid to play out-of-the-box characters that add story diversity to the party. And I think that it's really important to have a player who's not afraid to take risks, and you never take it to the extreme where it's at the expense of the other players. So you still always find a way to play with everybody else, even if it's playing an oppositional character. Oppositional character. Thank you. And I think that's really important when you have a campaign and you have a party. Not everybody always has to get along. It's okay to have different morals in a party so long as at the end of the day you guys can work together. And there's probably been a character, but I think that you have a great balance of playing characters who differ from other people in the party while still being able to play nice. I really appreciate that, especially with the your sexist racist character in the beginning of the Apocalyptia game. I think that was certainly an interesting character that I know I certainly would never have the guts to play.
I wish that guy had lived longer.
I do too. I think it would have been interesting to see where he would have gone with some of the other things that happened.
It was disappointing.
But yeah, I think that really helps to have somebody who, like, you really get into your characters. And I think I could say that about everybody that's sitting with me around this table, that you guys all, like, really get into your characters. And then that helps me in turn, because where I'm still relatively new, I'm trying to figure out how to get into characters. And it really helps to have everybody around me, being really into playing their character, using voices and accents and all that sort of thing.
I think trying to change your voice is a big one. I know that's something I struggle with sometimes, but I know Clayton, Seth Big Smile, had a very distinct, different tone and way of talking than you did. That really helped and this could also just in general in games help when someone does go out of their way to establish a different way of talking, so that way you know exactly when someone's talking in character and when someone isn't. That's and it also just helps you get inside the character's head. And so you've always been really good about that, Clayton, in the couple games we've played. And I think that that's a good thing for everyone to try to practice in general, would be just try to switch up a little bit. It doesn't have to be a full-on, like Southern accent or anything, but just try to change your tone a little bit or something. And I think that's an important thing for people to try to do.
Yeah, that's something I know that a lot of us around the table try to do, specifically KP and KD, with the most recent characters you've been playing have been very successful in creating accents, as well as, I don't think this was recorded, but Beth. Oh wait, no, it was the one shot when you did, Tits McGee 6000. It was, very subtle, but, I would not discount your abilities to try on a character for size and explore them with voices. I've been really weird speaking today. I'm sorry, friends.
You can't speak good.
I can't speak good.
I ain't know nothing about them words.
But, I wouldn't play down the fact that you're really good at it. And, even though you've only been playing it with us for a short time, you've been a pleasure to play with. Specifically, that none of your characters feel the same. You're always playing something different.
We can kind of give you the same compliment we gave Jordan, in that you're not afraid to play an asshole from time to time.
Yeah, well, I've been trying it out, because Clayton said that's a good way to kind of expand your repertoire and kind of get over your shyness. He's like, play a couple assholes, so I was like, alright.
Yeah, so I think that's, to the audience, don't be afraid to just have a little bit of a character that just doesn't get along with everybody else. You know, just kind of does their own thing, yells at people, but not in a mean way, just in an asshole way.
And I also think you've done a great job of, so far, playing the asshole character without being an asshole in your meta game situations. And obviously, you're not an asshole in real life. I don't think. But, I mean, despite, like, thinking of that one shot, playing a definite jerk, your actions when speaking out of character and the things you did and the way you let other players still act and do things like that's the path to walk there. Don't be afraid to play an asshole. Don't be afraid to do your own thing. But remember, you're not alone in this thing we're doing. And I know you said you're pretty new to role playing, and we know you are. But I think you've done a fantastic job of figuring out what your character is good at, and then not being afraid to own that and to always let the party know. Yeah, hey, that this plan we're coming up with, like, I'm good at this thing, and I want to do this thing. Like, I've seen first-time players be a lot more shy with, even though they're statted out to be a beast at something, they just don't, maybe they don't know, but I think more often than not, it's afraid to enact, even though they know they're good, that good thing upon the plan. And we've always done that so far, especially with Anna, anyway.
About playing an asshole character, I want to throw in the caveat that it only works with groups who you know how they're going to react to that asshole character.
Yeah, don't bring it into like a new group.
No.
Right, yeah, because then people aren't going to know, is the character an asshole or is the player an asshole? And then also, too, I've been doing, like, before each asshole character, I've been like, hey, just so everybody knows, I'm going to play an asshole. I'm not just having a bad day today. So, you know.
Yeah, another thing, like, speaking of that, checking in with the group, I think that's really important for players to do. If you're trying something new, if you're unsure of something, just checking in with the group. And you're always really great with doing that. And I think that's something that most players should aspire for, to be able to communicate with the rest of the party, specifically when you're playing asshole characters like that, or you're trying something new, or you're going to like, hey, I think I'm done with this character, I'm going to retire it, just checking in with everybody. I think that's really smart.
And by the same token, if you're a player and you encounter someone who's being an asshole in the game, whether it's a friend group or a group of strangers, remember that you're in a collective storytelling experience, and if you see something that someone is doing that you don't like, don't be afraid to just openly and honestly say, like, hey guys, this thing, not a big fan of it, can we talk about it? Like, maybe change things, don't know how you're feeling. I think that a lot of people might be afraid to break something by bringing something like that up, but I consider that pretty critical in any role-playing group, is if something's bugging you, bring it up. I mean, as you said, like, most of you might be friends. If it's a strange group, you could still bring it up, and if they respond really negatively to you, then you don't want to be playing with that stranger group.
And if you're in that situation where you feel like you want to say something about somebody else, that is very hard for pretty much everyone to do. And at that point, I think you should go to the game master and if you can't say it yourself, say it to the game master, because the game master's role is partly to facilitate the game.
Good point.
Because they are not you, they might have hopefully they might have a more tactful way of saying it. Not that anyone here wouldn't be tactful, but they might have another way of approaching the problem, so that if it might be a problem between the two players, they might be able to smooth it over as an outside third-party negotiator. Because that's what the game master is there for, is to negotiate the story and the players, and also negotiate the players as well.
And if you're a game master, be aware of people doing that. Don't be a megalomaniac. Don't be an asshole yourself. Try to play that mediator. Because, I mean, in my experience, the players are relying on you, both for the fun and the story and the role-playing. But if something like that happens, that's a really good point, that the game master can absolutely fill that role.
And if there is a problem at the table, the game master probably is going to be the last one to know, because the game master is focused on everything else that's happening
Yeah.
during the game. If a bunch of people are having a problem with a player, somebody needs to talk to the game master about it, because I know I have been in the situation where I've had a very problem player and shit was happening that I didn't see because the player was sitting the furthest away from me. I could not see, for instance, that they were like not rolling dice and just giving me numbers.
That's just straight up cheating.
Yeah. But sometimes that happens, and that's something that sometimes the game master isn't going to notice because they've got all their dice that they got to worry about, all their NPCs they got to worry about. They're not going to see the little squabble that happens between two people who are sitting right next to each other.
Hayley, you mentioned something about knowing when a character might need to be retired or something like that, and it made me think of... I was trying to think of nice things to say about all of you. And I thought of something...
I've been trying so hard to think of nice things to say about you.
It made me think of something that I thought of for old KD over there. I have myself... okay, so it's mostly true. I've never had a character die. I've had a character die at the final session of a game. I was the last one to die, and then the game ended right after I died. But in the middle of a campaign, I've never had a character death. I think twice now, Kyle, seen you handle really, really well in many ways a character dying and then making a new character, or transitioning over to a character, or retiring a character, however you want to look at it. And you do it well in the sense that you have a very distinct characterization of each one, so that it's very clear to the rest of the players, it still looks like KD, but he is playing someone totally different, and I can see that immediately. The Apocalyptia game, Ibana, two big examples there. Also, you have shown absolutely no fear and no remorse in killing off your characters. If you're like, it's their time to go, I think, not necessarily that you don't get attached, I do not mean that at all, but you have a very wise sense of, it's this character's time to go, I'm going to do something cool with it. It would make sense for that character why I chose to have them retire, or why I had them go out in a blaze of glory. It makes sense for what they would do in that situation, and you're cool about it, and you happily make a new character that's wildly different, or even just different enough so that we know, like, I feel like it could be something where a player death player death would be
tragic.
A character death might cause, like, a rift in a group, where some people might be like, no, I missed that character, but you really almost just like this very sage, like, it was their time. And that's hard to do. You're very attached to a character. A lot of us do. That's well done on your end.
Yeah, you're very story focused, and you're like a good writer in the sense of they always say kill your darlings. You might be very attached to a character, but when it's going to make a good story and it's going to make an impact, you're like, all right, let's do this.
Well, ultimately, I'm just marching all of my characters to the chopping block. Depends on when it's their time to go.
To Valhalla, the Viking ship sails.
I think well, thank you, first off. The second, I think that, having an idea in your head when you first make a character of sort of what their end condition is, as well as based off their personality and their backstory and their history, would they be okay at dying or going out at this particular moment in time, is sort of important. And I think that's a good thing for players to try and have going into a game. Because you will inevitably reach a point, if it's the end of the campaign, or maybe it's in the middle, where your character's goals are, maybe their goals are finished, or maybe their goals are unfinished, but you know that the most in-character thing you could do right now would be to go and either sacrifice yourself, or, if you're playing a paladin who broke his code, and you know that he would have to stand trial for that. I feel like that's something that's a good idea for players to sort of help roleplay a little bit, is to have an idea of that end sort of condition going into a game. With Magnus and my Apocalyptia characters, I just tried to think about, would they be okay stopping at this point, and usually that answer was yes. So
taking that just a little bit further and not just focused on the death, I admire the amount of attention that you put into trying to get into the head of your character. You do that a lot. Pretty much every time we're talking about a game out of the game, be like, well, such and such character I'm playing would think this or do that or whatever. Like, you really are trying to figure out who the character is that you are and what you're supposed to do given that. That's really hard for me. You know, I'm me puppeting around some bag of numbers, but you
Is that all we are to you, Jordan? This bag of numbers.
I wasn't talking about you all, I was talking about my character.
Oh, I misunderstood.
Tensions are high at the table today.
Jesus.
Just
breaking your balls, bud.
Nice about each other. Come on.
KP's been drinking since 9. He's surly.
That's AM. It's my grandma's dandelion wine.
Super good.
We made mimosas.
But no, yeah, you really try to figure out who your characters are, and it's not like you're always playing the same character either. You play a lot of really different kinds of dudes, and you got a real good sense of who they are. I feel like you could write a story about the character and have that character's voice and motives just down. And that's really cool.
Not only who they are, but how the events that have happened are going to cause that character to evolve or grow or change.
That's something that I struggle with a lot as a player, is wishing that I could project a character's thoughts more. You know, storytelling in a book and an RPG are completely separate. In that, like in a book, you know, you're able to have those moments in which you can, the reader can view the inner thoughts of a character, or some of the things like going through their mind. And it gives you a whole new perspective maybe on what this character's feeling or thinking or doing in their personality. On an RPG, you don't get that because you're playing this character actively, you're not reading about them passively. And so, for the longest time, I really tried to play characters that had this stupid amount of depth that it was kind of hard to convey because, again, I can't like pause a session and be like, all right, guys, these are all the things going through my character's head right now. Let me just give you like an inner monologue, because that, one, takes away from everyone else's time, and, you know, two, is just stupid.
I think you could do that in a Death Note game, but it would be an outer monologue.
Yeah, right.
Sort of dry erase thought bubble.
Yeah, just next to me.
Well, hold on. I think the way, with the way that Magnus was built up, specifically headed towards his blaze of glory, and that small session where Magnus took a moment to take a breath and realize that he's been slaying his like brethren. That was played really well as a player. The fact that you were able to check in with all of us, but also as a character, it's like Magnus is gonna take a moment, sit down, because we care so much about the character that you made, and you put so much effort into it. We really got to take that quiet moment, which is pretty rare in RPGs, especially one about armies and all of these really big battles. We were able to have this beautiful quiet moment, and we wouldn't have been able to have that if you hadn't crafted out Magnus's thoughts. Whether we ended up getting them or not, that really helps the character. And having a good character makes the world a difference to a campaign.
Yeah, like looking around the table during a game, I try to picture people as their characters, and you're one of the easiest people to picture as your character. And I think those inner thoughts that you come up with, that depth that you come up with, like, comes forward. You know, whether you're explicitly expressing it or not.
It's good to know. I think, in general, sort of, when you go into a game and you're playing a character, I know, usually, even when I'm sort of in the background, or I'm not part of an event, if my character's still technically there for it, and I'm still looking at that event through the lens of the character and trying my best to be like, okay, what do I think about this? How would this affect me, even if I'm not an active participant? And so it kind of helps keep you focused on how would my character react to this situation versus how would me as a player playing a character react to this situation. So it's something I really try to work on and do as much as I can.
One thing you specifically did with Magnus that really conveyed to everybody around the table just that there was a lot of depth with what was going on with the character is during downtime, you specifically said things like, I spend a lot of time just alone. And in a game like this, it's hard to, like, we're just going around saying what our characters are doing. Saying I'm just spending some time by myself says a lot about the fact that there is a lot more going on with the character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, plus it gives us prompts to like, oh, well, you shouldn't have to be alone. I remember that happened with the hunting party with Thrima and Talon. That's happened before where Desdemona's come up to you, and I feel like you're able to give us opportunities of role-playing nuggets of joy. You plant the little
Tasty role-playing nuggets.
Made of people.
What? I will say that sort of, I don't feel like I'm alone in that. I'm very glad you guys think that I do that well, but I think everyone at the table, whether or not you think you do it super well, I feel like everyone does have varying character moments, and are pretty good at playing their characters. Jordan, you may feel like you're pupping around that sack of numbers, but, I think back to your hunter character, who is this professor. You had a very distinct way of talking. You approached each problem essentially like how a professor would. It just felt as though maybe, and I don't know it from your perspective, maybe you felt as though it wasn't the same, but like, it definitely felt like you were playing this kind of kooky professor character. And then you just stabbed me in the back on accident.
Man.
Legitimate accident.
Legitimate accident.
One time I tried to get physical.
But yeah, I think that's something that everyone at the table does pretty well. And I think that, and it, to translate it off of, let's all pat each other on the back to what can, people that are playing a game learn from that. It's scary to play a character, super in character for the first time. I'll be real. Like, at least it was for me. Because you kind of just are like, I'm myself, but now I'm not myself. And it's a weird line to walk until you get used to it. But it really does make the hobby a lot more enjoyable for yourself and everyone else once you can kind of really embrace a character for the first time.
Is that St. Vincent? Sorry.
We haven't gotten to Hayley yet. And I wanted to say that when I was thinking, when we were driving out here, I was thinking about what I wanted to say about each person, and all I could see, for you in my head was just enthusiasm in huge block letters. And, like, really, you have a ridiculous amount of enthusiasm.
It is ridiculous.
But, like, I said this to you, like, a couple weeks ago. Like, when I was getting ready last October or November, I think, to start playing with this group, I was like scared to death of you people. Like I was like, I don't know what I'm going into, but like the very first time I came in here and sat down, Hayley was the one that sat down next to me and just started talking to me like she'd known me her entire life. And it made me feel like comfortable immediately. So you're incredibly good at bringing people into the group and facilitating them both out of character and in character. And then also, like, something that you've talked about that I think you kind of see in yourself as a weakness, but I see it, you can flip it to see it as a strength, is with how you always play face characters. And, like, that's your thing. And, like, but you're willing to say, like, I'm a face character, fight me. Like, that's your thing. And you, like, really own that. And you, like, really, you play it well. You've realized, you still have differences in each character, differences in backstory, and little differences in the way they present themselves as a face character to people. But like, I see that as a strength in a way, to be able to say, this is who I am, and just bite me if you don't like it. Oh. So I think it's cool.
Thank you.
Being invested in a campaign is always a good thing. And you've always been very invested in most games that this group runs. To the point of where you draw art, you like all the characters, not just your own. And I know back when I ran my first game where I had a lot of players that were super invested in, people were drawing art and like writing short stories in their spare time. That really made me as a GM want to like keep pushing content out and like work hard on the story. So I think that that's a good thing that you do and that people can learn from, because getting invested in a story in a game is a good thing, and people, if they can, should try to do that as best they can.
So I think the moral of the story is learn how to draw, friends.
Not even that. Like,
Not
Art
just
is
that,
so...
you made like 30 fucking NPCs for that Apocalyptia game. That was insane.
It was 39.
Completely statted out 39. Jesus.
Well, Beth, you stole my segue. Kyle, you stole my main point, and Jordan, you stole my secondary point.
Gotcha.
wow, Kyle, just think of something good to say. Just come on, off the cuff.
Do it now.
Do it now.
I'm going to continue with what I was going to say and not be pressured into this farce. Piggybacking off of your point earlier about looking around and being able to picture players as their character, it's very easy to do with you, Hayley, especially because of the art. Thanks, Kyle, for stealing that. I really do love that you draw art for all of this.
Oh,
It's
the
so
art is
cool.
fantastic.
It's very cool. And to our listeners, you don't have to be good at art. Don't be afraid to just sit there and doodle. Doodle a piece of gear, a knife your character has.
Or if you're good at writing, like, it doesn't. You can run it by the GM or not, even if it just helps you immerse yourself more. Do a little writing piece.
Yeah.
Just get some thoughts down.
That's
I've
cool
done
stuff
that
that
before.
Beth has done a couple times in Abena, is some
Oh, cool.
some fiction.
I'm glad people like that.
Yeah.
You wrote... Where can I find it?
No, it was the little piece. I read it in the one episode. The one about the illusionist.
Beautiful. Sorry, that's really great. Oh, okay.
Something that everybody sitting around this table does, and we've kind of been hitting on a little bit, is just the level of participation in the games. Everybody here adds something to the game, not only while we're playing, but also while we're not playing. You're constantly thinking about the game. We're talking about the game outside of the game. Whenever we're just out on the porch shooting the shit, we're talking about like how we're seeing the game, how we're seeing our characters, how we're seeing each other's characters, and that is a level of participation that I haven't seen a whole lot.
People are posting things to the Facebook group. I mean, even
Right.
just pictures that make them think of a character or something.
Right.
It is cool.
Yeah, we're nerds.
Yeah.
When I'm not playing the game, I'm sitting around with my leather-bound books. I have the Cavaliers game on the television, sipping a fine cognac. I'm not a nerd.
Warriors about to blow that 3-1 lead again.
What? What's that mean?
Anywho,
And part of the participation thing is just that everybody here cares about the story and the game. Everybody takes the fact that we get together and do this, they take it with some degree of seriousness. I don't mean like, oh, we're all super serious about what we're doing. That's different than just taking it seriously, respecting other people and how they're all seeing it, how they're all putting themselves into it, and everybody's building on each other constantly.
Taking it seriously definitely doesn't mean you have to be this serious, dour-focused person by any means. I agree with you that to take any hobby or sport for that matter, or some cooperative team-based thing that you do, and just respect that it is a team, respect that it is something everyone is there to enjoy, including yourself. Don't hamper your own fun. Everyone here does that very well.
For example, our Terrible game, which, if I remember correct, if I have the schedules right, is going to be coming out a few days after this podcast airs. That was not a serious game. That was a kooky off-the-walls game.
That's terrible, Tearable.
Yes. There will be show notes. We all take the game really seriously in that even in a wacky game like that, we bring everything that we have to make sure that we're all having fun. That's the level of seriousness that I mean. That's how we take the game seriously, is we make sure we're here to have fun, and we make sure that everybody else is here and has fun with us.
That brings up a complimentary thought that I would like to pay to you, Clayton, about the characters that you play. You play characters that are really fun to watch be played. And, like, man, Seth Big Smile had me cracking up, like, on the drive home, like, multiple times in Apocalypse. Just funny shit that you would think of to say. And, just hilarious takes on stuff. And, the fucking Ferengi quartermaster was awesome. And yeah, like it's not always like over the top ridiculous, but it's clever and it's thought out, and it's a joy to watch many times. So thank you for that.
Your characters rock. I mean, I cannot list on... It would be a long time. It'd be a very long list for me to go through and name my favorites. I couldn't just pick one. The goofy one-shot we played outside a couple weeks ago where everyone just made a random character that could exist in the world today. And you do this great impression of the guy from, what is it, My 600-Pound Life. A character many people would probably not think to play in a role-playing game. The Mimir from, you were GMing then, but it was an NPC, the Mimir from, the Planescape game. Your characters feel so vivid, and a lot of it is the accents, but I don't want to just focus on that. We know you can do good accents. We've talked about it before, geez. But it is an understanding that the character you make can still participate in this collective fantasy while also behaving exactly as that character would. It feels real. In a game where you are playing Seth Big Smile, a character who can manipulate and get things done, you do that without stepping on anybody's toes somehow. In a game where you decide to take kind of a back seat and let some other players shine, you played a teenage goth girl in an Apocalyptia game, and you didn't have a lot of skills. You didn't really contribute much to the adventuring party, but damn it, we had a good time.
I had 2 in medicine.
That's right. Yeah, I guess you were our first aid.
I was our medic with 2 in medicine.
But like in that game, like you were very comfortable taking that less ostensibly useful role, but you still made everyone else have a good time. You played your character so well. As soon as an alien shows up, all right, what's everyone doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Clayton, what are you doing? I run away screaming. Like I didn't expect that was one of that moment right there. I run away screaming was one of the first times I'd ever seen somebody in a role-playing game disengage from combat or the action or something that would have been fun just to stick with the bit of the character you were playing. You stick with the bit, Clayton. I love it.
This might be a strange compliment, but because you're such an amazing DM and you DM a lot, you play characters like a DM in the sense of you know how to work with story, you know how to work with other characters, you're always story-oriented, and I just feel like you're always the perfect storm of knowing the mechanics of a game and knowing the role-playing aspects of a game. And I think that's because you're such a seasoned player, and having someone like that in a party lets other people around have role models to aspire to. And I feel like since playing with you, I know I could speak for myself, but I think I've seen it in everybody else who we've been playing, that we have learned so much from you. And having somebody within your party who can play both DM and both player, it's really helpful to check in with them, learn from them, just like watching them play characters. It's always amazing to watch you play because, I don't know, I never really get to see you play characters since I've played with you, because you're always DMing. It's such a joy to watch you play characters. And I really appreciate that.
If I can just kind of bounce back a little bit about KP, you had mentioned like interacting with my NPCs. That would not happen without you guys interacting with the world, respecting the world, wanting to interact with NPCs. I've been in games where I've tried to present characters, I get into voices, I do something weird to like kind of evoke participation from other players, and I've had players in the past that it's just not been there. And everybody here wants to play. Everybody here wants to see what I have in store. And it's not just, well, let's just get this quest done. I try to design my game so that there is more going on in the world. You guys always want to find out what that is. You always ask the questions that leads me to reveal what's going on in the world. And you guys always ask me what the names of NPCs are.
Even the most minor NPC. What's your name?
Yeah, that dock worker we like briefly ran into. What was his name like? George, I think.
Now that we've all been slathered in compliments, can we talk about how we all suck now? Can we have constructive criticism? That'd be fun.
Well, we are at 56 minutes.
Man, an hour. That's an hour long. Wow.
It's kind of frightening.
Like maybe 2 or 3 minutes of that was our moments of silence and saying the spiel and all that. But yeah, we're at nearly an hour right now.
Usually my circle jerks are like 2 minutes at most.
Well, I believe that we were going to do a part series where next time we were going to be criticizing ourselves and mistakes that we've made. I know I've personally already started cultivating my long list.
Okay, so we'll save till next time where we express the things that we have learned from that we have done wrong. Well, guys, we're starting to run a little bit long. We've got a game we got to get to, and so we do have more things we're going to be talking about. So we're going to make a part 2 where we talk about mistakes that we have each made and how we've learned and grown from them. But for now, we got to stop this bullshit because we've got some dice that need to be rolled.
Yay.
This has been a production of Alien Familiar Media. You can find past episodes and more at alienfamiliar.com. You can email us at alienfamiliarmedia@gmail.com. This production is protected under a Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives license. Music for this episode is Suburban Outlaw by Forget the Whale and can be found at freemusicarchive.org.